Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Betsy Keteltas, and I work for Avow Foundation. We are the part of Avow Hospice and Avow Care Services that raises funds to carry out the mission of the wonderful services provided through hospice and non-hospice palliative care. I'm here today with Mark Klym, who is the partner in charge of the Naples office at Hahn Loeser. And Mark, I would like to thank you for joining me today. And I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Mark Klym. I focus my practice on trust and estates, both on the administration side and on the estate planning side. So I kind of see we do a little bit of everything from start to finish as far as planning. And then, when folks pass away, we also help administer their estates. And I've been doing this now since 1995, so for a good number of years. And Naples is a wonderful place to work and live, and I've lived here for 16 years and really enjoy it, and certainly understand and appreciate the great work that Avow does, and it's the amount of effort that goes into what Avow does is amazing, and the benefits that I see come out of it are pretty remarkable.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. And thank you for being here. And we've had a relationship with Hahn Loeser for many, many years, and very much appreciate the professionalism that you provide our community. And I agree with you, how fortunate to live in Naples, Collier County. We have some of the most generous donors I have seen across the country. And we are fortunate to work with some of the most incredible professionals I have seen in many parts of the country. I'd just like to kick things off a little bit. This past year has been interesting for all of us in so many different ways. And I'm wondering if you have seen in the number of clients that you are working with, are people speaking more and more about estate planning and legacy gifts than before?
Well, from strictly estate planning, there was obviously a period of time with the COVID virus where we saw very few people just in the initial phases, and then here in Florida, things opened up a little bit more quickly. So I did see sort of an uptick in people coming in to do planning, probably I would say maybe June of last summer, and that pretty much continued, where we had a large number of people that maybe they had more time to think about it. Maybe they saw, different impacts in their lives if, someone did get sick or they were concerned about it. So we definitely saw an uptick in people focusing on estate planning and coming in to do that kind of work. And then as far as, charitable giving and legacy planning, I think people realized as the pandemic went on, they saw that charities, were struggling and having some issues because they weren't allowed to do a lot of the traditional events that they've done for fundraising. So, I did have people asking more and more, about charitable giving and, how they could help out those organizations either immediately or, within their estate planning documents.
It's been interesting because so many of us, including Avow, we had to change the things that we do every year. So events were canceled, and we have our Avow Treasures resale stores, which bring in a lot of money for our mission. We had significant losses in revenue there. At the same time, our donors were super, super generous and very supportive. But that brought about this conversation that we're seeing now about endowment gifts and how endowments really sustain organizations, especially through challenging times. COVID-19, when a hurricane blasts through and fundraising efforts go downhill for certain organizations. I'm wondering if you could speak to endowment gifts. What are endowments? Different ways you've seen people fund endowments through estate gifts. Plain gifts.
Sure. Yeah, well, an endowment is really, it for each organization, it might be a little bit different, but generally an endowment's going to be a fund that the charitable organization has that people can contribute to, where usually the principal is protected in some way. and then the income or gains are then used to fund the organization's charitable purposes. So the core principal investment is protected, for the future health and well-being of the entity, while the income then is used really for the day-to-day needs of the organization. And it can vary from organization to organization as far as what kind of restrictions are put on access to the principal, how much of the income gets distributed to the charitable organization.
Mhm.
But the great thing about an endowment is, as a donor, as a person making the gift, that the funds are going to be used to help keep that organization going for many years to come, because that core principal amount is going to stay intact, and it's the income that's being used for the charitable purposes. So it's really a great vehicle for charities to make sure that they can sustain their activities long into the future.
And we love it also because it sustains the legacy of our donors. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we see a planned gift in general, or a gift to endowment through an estate, we remember that person. We know what they're interested in. We know what they wanted to help sustain as a tribute and a legacy to their life. And so I love that part. We don't always know about when we're named in a trust or included in a bequest. When we do, we're able to have that conversation with the donor.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to, what would you like your legacy to be? And as we see these larger gifts, endowments at this time are so important. Endowment gifts. You speak with a lot of people in general about estate planning. What would you say to someone who may not have thought of charitable giving outside of the tribute and legacy that gift might provide? Are there any suggestions? Do you have any advice for folks who may not have considered a charitable gift in their estate planning?
Well, I think a lot of people don't think about it, and and usually when I bring it up, I'll say, do you want to include, any charities? A lot of times it then does spark that thought process. They may have overlooked it. They may just not have thought about, making that gift, that sort of lasting gift. And then once we get into the conversation about, how do you accomplish that and what's the best way to accomplish it, a lot of times there's some more creative ways that can save, income tax or estate taxes for them that they didn't realize. And probably the biggest one that I run into is the use of an IRA or a retirement account, because you can easily name a charity as the beneficiary of one of those accounts at the time of your death. And then the charity basically gets it income tax free, estate tax free. It's a huge benefit. Whereas if it had been left to an individual, they would have had some income tax liability associated with that account. So that's one that a lot of clients, I think, don't think about. And it's easy because, if they did change their mind down the road, they can easily change that through a beneficiary designation, or they can change the amount or the percentage. So there's a lot of different creative ways we can do it. Obviously, a will is probably the one that most people think of. In Florida, we utilize revocable living trust quite often. So we'll, a lot of times name the charity maybe as a beneficiary under the revocable living trust. And it's important, I think, to have the dialogue with the charity to find out, if you do have a specific purpose that you want to make the gift for, have that dialogue with the charity so it goes to the right place. Because a lot of times I'll have clients just give me a name of an institution, and that institution may have 20 different goals or missions out in the community, and it's important to know where do you want to where do you want this to go. And so I try to encourage people to have that dialogue.
I agree with you, and for many reasons, just wanting those funds to support what their interest is. We also steward those gifts. When someone dies, we are paying attention. We're working with attorneys as the estate is settling. And in some cases, most cases, I've worked with some fabulous attorneys, but we do like to be on top of things so the donor's intentions come together. Any closing words, closing remarks, Mark. I mean, you've said so many wonderful things so far anyway.
Well, I guess to sort of repeat myself, but I would definitely encourage, individuals that are interested in making a gift of having that dialogue, making sure the charity gets named correctly in the documents. I've had circumstances where I've had documents that I've received from, that were, drafted elsewhere that name a charity, and sometimes it's not clear. Maybe there's 3 or 4 charities, or maybe the charity changed its name. So it is important. I just encourage people to have that conversation, with the charity, and understand that they're not going to be, they're not going to be predatory or anything like that. I mean, they're happy to work with you and provide whatever information you need. So, I think having that dialogue is important, and then involving the estate planning attorney a little bit in that dialogue, so everybody's on the same page. So.
I like that. Teamwork there. Mark, I want to thank you for your time today, for talking with me about endowments and estate planning. I wish you well, and I hope to see you out and about sometime soon.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.